Today, we talk about relation-based selling, female leadership in hospitality, and AI. Whether you're working in restaurants, with restaurants, or frankly, in any role where you interact with people, our conversation with today's guest, Kim DeCarolis, the former SVP of Strategic Growth at Craveworthy Brands, shares widely applicable tips and insights into effective communication techniques and nurturing professional relationships. We also dive into the progress and future state of female leadership in hospitality, highlighting some really great initiatives that continue to move the needle forward. Finally, Kim shares her views on effective uses of AI in hospitality tech, including some interesting viewpoints on the dynamic pricing debate. You won't want to miss it. I'm George Wetz.
And I'm Matt Holy, and this is the Menu Mix.
Ladies and gentlemen.
This is the Menu Mix. Welcome to the Menu Mix.
The Menu Mix.
The Menu Mix.
Conversations with thought leaders about the future.
The future of hospitality.
Trends. Perspectives.
Now sit back, pour yourself a glass of something nice, and enjoy the episode.
That's so tasty.
Joining us today is Kim DeCarolis, former SVP of Strategic Growth at Craveworthy Brands, spearheading the strategy behind their remarkable growth over the last couple of years. Kim's growth within the hospitality space is an interesting one, as she actually started on the vendor side, leading sales teams at Punch, Seven Rooms, and PathSpot. She's also a regular on industry panels and in hospitality media like National Restaurant News and QSR Magazine. And now she's on the Menu Mix. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Donald, for having me.
Awesome, Kim. We're very excited to have you on the show today because of your wide-ranging experience, but also how quickly you've moved up the ranks in the sector. So we're going to touch on a few topics around that I think are going to be very interesting to listeners. And that's where I really wanted to start, was because you've had roles on the vendor side, selling software into restaurants, and then you've now been merchant side. You know, we actually had a conversation with Bruce McAdams, who's a university professor, and he was talking about how brands are finding it more difficult to recruit from within and are increasingly looking outside. So you're one of those people that's been attracted from the outside in. So what was it that convinced you to make that change?
I think it's been an interesting change. I think, to be honest, everyone should play both sides. You have a little bit more compassion for being on the brand side as vendors approach you, where you truly respond by saying, I think your tech is great, or I think your services are needed, but right now we just simply cannot onboard you. We can't either afford you, or it's just, the capital is not there for this. So I definitely suggest it to everyone. And so I have always been on the vendor side, and then I made the switch over to brand side when I started at Fat Brands. And so I met Andy and Jessica, who was on their team as well, at a conference called Prosper. And we had great conversations about what we're talking about today, your career growth, what they were looking for. And, leaving the conference, Andy said, "You're going to come work for me." And I said, "Doing what?" Like, I'm on the vendor side. I don't even know what you're talking about. And, great relationship with them, but they just called me and we had a nice conversation and just chose to take a leap and try the brand side. And then, obviously Craveworthy was a similar situation where talked to Greg a little bit about what his, vision was for Craveworthy and the growth that could be there, playing up to some of the strength by acquiring brands and seeing where we can kind of get foundational, let's call it technology or processes in place to grow those brands and then obviously grow Craveworthy. So those opportunities were exciting to me. And it's always important to keep learning. So I learned a couple new things at Fat Brands, learned a lot at Craveworthy, and, keeping that journey going today.
That's very interesting. You talked about the compassion of kind of having both sides of that. I guess if you were now speaking to your former self, who was working the vendor side, now that you've been on operator side, what kind of advice would you give to your former self about how you might have performed even better or sold more or had better relationships with operators?
I think it's super important. Obviously, a lot of networking goes on at shows. If you have the ability to get a meeting with someone, take court reporter notes, and making sure that you are listening to what they're saying in terms of when timing will work, what their actual struggles are, so that every conversation with them is meaningful, because they're getting hit up from every single direction on every single services, whether it's in your department or not. I had someone reach out to me about supply chains and packaging. I'm like, nothing to do with me. I'm not even going to be in the room. It's this decision is made. So you're making sure that, you're being courteous of their time, and then being very conscious on your, let's call it reach out, right? So one of my favorite, any relationship in life, including your checking account, should have 2 deposits before withdrawal. And so every time you reach out to someone regarding something you need, hopefully you're not talking about yourself at least twice. What are you doing at work? What are you most proud of? How's your family life? How's travel? What's going on there? And just making just these simple touches. That way, when you do reach out and say, I would love to talk to you about if I'm able to help you with whatever you're selling, people are much more apt to have those conversations and be honest with you, because you come off as a human versus leading the conversation about yourself. And I think that's something that needs reminders in the space. Everyone gets them. You get LinkedIn requests or you get emails, and the first letter of the email is, I'm reaching out because I work here and I want you to have a meeting. And I want you to also schedule the meeting. That's a big pet peeve of mine as well. So I, think that there's really just compassion on understanding what the brand side people are going through. About a lot of different hats are worn on brand side, and then also compassion for the vendors that, they have jobs at shows to get people at dinners, to get people at happy hours. And so from the brand side point of view, I try my very best to respond to what I can, to give at least honest answers by saying this isn't even on the radar this year, and, make sure that I do RSVPs appropriately. So that's my feedback on being both sides, just making sure that everyone's trying to do a good job of what they do, but a little compassion is sometimes goes a long way.
Yeah, I love that. The mantra of, 2 deposits before a withdrawal, I think is just so widely applicable across different sectors and just business as a whole. It's really great.
Yeah.
But it sounds like relationship management and compassion is like really at the core of, I guess, your sales style. But, selling software is super different from selling a restaurant brand to like a franchisee. So what are some of the other core lessons throughout your journey that have a wider business application that you could share?
I think being comfortable with the uncomfortable, and that goes on both sides as well. So, letting people know that this software is not developed in this area, but this is what we're doing. That way later down the road, if something doesn't work, you said, we communicated about this. Follow-up emails are super important for this as well. But, we communicated about this, that in its MVP stage, you agreed that you would grow with us in this. So we're asking for some grace while we kind of work through the process there. And then the same thing really goes with the franchisees. People call and they're just like, oh, so you're going to make me a millionaire and I don't really have to be in store. No, running a restaurant is hard and you have to be there. And it's a little unglamorous when you are the owner and you're there at 8:30 p.m. cleaning out a grease trap. But those are things that you have to do and you have to be passionate about it. So I think, it'd be easy just to say, yes, sign up. This is the American dream and just go with it and let them figure it out. But I think by having honest conversations with people and, the good, bad, and ugly, really level sets for a healthy relationship when it comes to frustrations later or successes later, right? We told you to get there. There'd be 18 months before you'd start seeing revenue, or it'd be 18 months before you'd start seeing a huge tick in, lunch and dinner day parts. So I think those are big life lessons that are easy to skirt over, and it could be a little bit difficult to do, but I think that's really the best way to keep everything honest, and then also just be your genuine self on what's working and what's not. So if people are genuine, I think that's where the hospitality space really will take off, and understand that you have good intentions going into it. You're honest with each other, and that's really where success will grow.
Yeah, it sounds like transparency is really at the core of what you were just talking about there, right? Like restaurants are a very gritty industry to be a part of, and transparency is key when you're selling the restaurant to a potential franchisee who might be new to the space as well, right? But in going back to something that George was saying before about recruiting the hospitality industry, kind of recruiting outside talent, and what other advice would you have for these restaurant groups trying to recruit really good talent into an industry that's like really fun and exciting, but also a lot of really, really hard work.
Yeah, no, I would say that's exciting. I think people from the outside in, as you know, and being in restaurant space, restaurants are very incestuous. People go from restaurant tech to restaurant tech, or restaurant brand to restaurant brand. And so bringing someone in perhaps from CPG or retail or grocery really is kind of a fresh set of eyes, and perhaps something that hasn't been explored in a restaurant and or on the tech side on their approach, or even what the tech company doesn't realize they can be a solve for. So I think that's something that a fresh set of eyes of bringing the outside in is something that's super exciting. I'm of the mindset, two minds are better than one. I mean, I don't know the correct answer of everything. No one is perfect. And by collaborating with really smart individuals, the talent only goes up. I don't actually want to be the smartest person in the room because I want to learn something every single day. That's when people get stale. That's when ideas get stale. That's when sales stay stale. I just think that it's important to really collaborate on trying to be innovative. There's new generations with new ways of communication and technology and ways to reach them that if you just keep doing things the same exact way, you're not going to grow or reach a certain generational base.
That really speaks to diversity of experience and skill sets. But there's other kinds of diversity as well. I mean, it's shown how important it is to decision making, leadership, business overall success on having a diverse array of opinions from a diverse group of people on the team. And you're a very prominent female figure in the industry. You're just speaking at a conference in Atlanta recently about kind of female leadership in hospitality. And one question we're kind of curious of is your analysis of where you think the industry's at right now when it comes to female leadership. How good a job is the industry doing, and where would you like to see some changes or some more progress?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, my first job in the restaurant space, I of course interviewed with HR, and then I had the privilege of getting a promotion working for my mentor, Mark Wayne. And, I had to go into HR to change the paperwork, change who I'm working for. And this is sad, but it's true. On my resume, when they opened my file, her notes were young and cheap. Great. That's like, oh, better. But at the same time, I think we are getting better. I think there's still a lot of work to do. I spoke also at QSR Magazine in Atlanta. There's a Women in Restaurant Leadership Conference that QSR put together. It's their second year, and they're really trying to focus on how to get women a little bit more confident or a little bit more bold in the room, let's just say. And I'm impressed with the women in our space. I think we do a phenomenal job. I think more groups like that are needed. One of my favorite sessions was at actually a women's food service forum. And they have a great conference and a great organization as well. And, they said that every woman should bring someone with them. So just sit in the room and listen, or pull them up, whatever, 2 levels, because this is statistics, but industry shows that, on a resume, if a woman can only do about 40% of the job application, she won't apply. Where a man typically will just say, let's see what happens, then get the call and then learn as they go. And so having a little bit more confidence or having more resources when it comes to whether it's mentorship, and there's a great group called LEAD that is providing mentorship. And so, availability to say, should I do this, or am I strength at this, or what should I study and or practice prior to, so I have the confidence to go into this. And I think we're getting a lot better at that. I had some great mentors throughout my career, Greg Creed, Jeremy Tyson, all are males, right? But they've always kind of pushed the boundaries of saying, why can't you do it? And no, you should be in the room. You are good at this, and kind of building that confidence up. And so surrounding yourself with that, I think, is super important. Obviously, it's easier said than done just to say, you want to be my mentor. It takes a lot of work. And so I think people also need to not use that as a buzzword, but use it more as a formal invite to say, can, you invest in me to help me grow in my career? And I think that will really, really kind of catapult a lot of the programs. But I do think, like I said, Women's Food Service Forum, LEAD, Women in Restaurant Leadership are providing those catalysts to get those people together to create those organic relationships where they can be outside of, whatever your working organization is, to build mentorship and build a safe space for people to kind of learn and grow as they come through restaurants.
Yeah, mentorship is So important. And it's great to see all those organizations that you just listed. We actually, one of our previous guests, Robin Robison, I believe she's on the board of LEAD. She's great. She spoke about it a little bit. But when you look at some of the statistics around female leadership in hospitality, yes, there's been progress, but still like a little bit slow. So 10 years ago, it's about 1 in 5 execs or C-suite were women in hospitality. Now we're at about 1 in 4 women are executives in hospitality, leaning more on the HR and sales and marketing side. I guess just looking at those stats, do you think there's something that is still holding back women from being considered to go into those roles? Or do you think it just takes a little bit of time for the industry to adjust? Because at the same time, at the director level, there's a 50-50 split now. So is it just kind of the pipeline of new talent going into the roles? It just takes a little bit of time to get there? Or is there still something, I guess, in hospitality and in industries as a whole that kind of needs to be adjusted?
Change overall takes time, right? Nothing happens overnight in any capacity. So I think that the right measures are being taken to have the change, resources and change. One of the things that was another WFF comment is they really encourage men to come to the conferences, which sounds a little bit interesting, but in their opinion, they said, why would we make decisions in a room that 50% of the genders, are not in? So having men in the room to say, I didn't realize this was happening, or, that this was going on, or you guys felt this way, it's not going to make any change because it's 50%, genders, And so I think that was a super powerful one. There's some really great men in the industry that do support women completely and are passionate about it. And I think it's just starting to get a voice, which I think, of course, is where a lot of change starts. Do I think there needs to be more progress? I do. But at the same time, I think that it's important to not knee-jerk react and just hire a bunch of ladies and have them, change your numbers on your HR report. I think the best person should get the job. Do I think women listen a little bit better? Yes. Do I think that perhaps that, there's different opportunities that are just assumed for guys? Sure. But I don't think that anyone has it. I really don't believe anyone has it out to just say that, I'm not hiring a lady because she's a lady. I'd rather hire a male for a C-level executive. And if it is happening, at least don't tell me about it. I want to say that there is really good momentum. And there's even organizations like Worth, for example, just making sure that women, when they're out at trade shows, are feeling secure and safe, and they started selling pins so that, they know who their male allies are. And so I think just more awareness on those opportunities and expanding the group to be one big family instead of pockets of or cliques of groups that, if someone's not there, you don't necessarily know who is good people. And I think that goes across for men and women. And so, like I said, I'm positive and very hopeful about all the momentum. I think it's been good.
I think that's a really interesting point you say about the men being in the room, because it helps with empathy from the male-female perspective, and then for them to share, in then their networks as well from what they've heard firsthand in those groups. So I really like that. And the other thing is you're speaking, where there's more of a propensity for the senior women's roles to be in areas like HR, marketing, but not in the others. So that makes me think about role models and how important role models that kind of look like you are. Who have kind of been your role models in your career, if you don't mind me asking?
I am a huge fan of Anne Fink from Pepsi. She is a powerhouse. I say this in a very sincere way because I don't think she's actually that much older than me, but my family knows about this. I think, I'm like, when I grow up, I'm going to be Anne Fink. She just carries herself perfectly. She has a personality. She supports her team unbelievably well. Other powerhouses are Sarika from Papa John's. She's amazing. She's actually in technology and operations, IT, super intelligent, super wonderful human. Now I'm going to forget a bunch of people. I'm a part of a couple different groups. Kind of the women just get together, but everyone in there is unbelievably talented. Kelly Grogan just posted a master class today about catering. And I think we're just getting more opportunities with some of these women that perhaps in the past, if you didn't know them, but they're getting opportunities to speak out. my parents both worked my whole life. And so my mom was always working. She was in real estate. And, you learn a balance of travel and family versus work, but then you also learn hard work. Not every single day is going to be perfect. And I think just seeing women that work hard and I think seeing women that want to do good is an inspiration. And I don't think it even has to be a woman, though, if I'm being honest. I think just good people in the world that work hard and can be a mentor is what you look up to be in whatever role yourself. Alice, actually, from Crispy Crunchy Chicken, spoke at the QSR event. And, she gave some great advice in how not every conversation you have is going to be perfectly pleasant, whether it's with an employer, a trade show, on conference call. And, if you're just yourself and you're yourself all the time, and this is something that I swear gets me through trade work or trade shows, is the same Kim you have at a trade show is the same Kim that will be at my dinner table tonight with my husband. And it's easier just to be your authentic self. And that's who you should be. You shouldn't want to act more like a man. You shouldn't have to act more like something you're not. And so if you are feeling, yourself and you are always true to that, that's how you're going to be the most successful.
That's really interesting and great advice. And I guess just reflecting as you said that, perhaps it's as there are now more women in leadership, the kind of need to act in a different way that's maybe not yourself and not authentic is diminishing.
Right.
Because there's more understanding and empathy around,
I promise you,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out with the boys and have bourbon. I don't like chest hair. It's like going to hurt. I like my stuff. So, I mean, just if you're just yourself, it's something I think that everyone is good at. And, everyone is in this space because they're good at what they're doing, right? They would get flushed out quickly. So, if you're here, just remember yourself that you're here for a reason. And if you are looking for more or you're looking how to get better, these are the uncomfortable conversations that you should have by saying, what could I have done better in that meeting? Or what can I do to be promoted in 10 months? Or what can I work on? Because eventually I would like to be perhaps a GM, or perhaps I'd like to be a C-level executive in a brand. What would you say that, I either need to take a class on, or, could you give me the opportunity in a room to present, and I'll work with you to present in the room, and just making sure that you're taking every opportunity you can. Ashley from Inspire Brands even said on one of the conferences, she's raise your hand. She's like, if you're scared, put your hand in the air, because then people recognize that you're willing to do the hard work to either A, get better, or B, roll your sleeves up and get the job done. And I think that's something that, goes for men and women in the room, of how to get noticed. No one's going to come knock on your door and say, I saw your hard work and, I'd like to give you this opportunity, and the bow is on it. You have to get out there. The world is very competitive in restaurants and everywhere. So
Yeah, this is so important, so important. And just before we move on to a bit of technology, one final question on diversity, which is generational diversity, something we're very interested in.
Yeah.
And understanding, I guess, the different characteristics of different generations and how that translates into different styles in business. You're a millennial and senior at this point, so you're going to have peers who are Gen X and baby boomer. What should teams and people who work under millennials expect in terms of management style or leadership style, if you can draw any
yeah, no,
conclusions
of
there?
course. I don't have any statistics on this, so I'm just going to go strictly off my personality. But I'm casual, right? So I think that's a millennial. So just call me or text me. I don't have hours of operations, right? Whenever you call me, I'm going to answer, or you text, I'll get back to you really quickly. But then at the same time, I don't mind if your job is done, if your work is done for the day, you've done your calls. This is obviously a sales leadership role. You've done your calls and you go golfing at 3. It affects me 0. Just get your job done. There's a balance of work and life, because then there's also trade shows that start on Sunday, and I don't give you hours back for that. So I think as long as you are doing your job well, I would like to believe that millennials are pretty flexible on understanding that work-life balance. And obviously there's details when it comes to sales versus IT or operations. Those are not as flexible, but as long as your work is getting done, I do believe in the flexibility. I do think the younger generations are looking for more black and white, where I don't have an off switch. If I need to, I have a meeting tonight at 8 p.m. and I just, it's okay. Working internationally, you do a lot of things at night that are not necessarily going to fit in an 8 to 5. I think some people my generation or my age have gotten burnt out from that. But at the same time, we have that work hard, play hard mentality where I think the younger generations are trying to make sure there is no burnout, and they're trying to separate between their personal life and their professional life to keep things balanced. Those are observations just I see. I think there's also a lot with remote work. The younger generations, and I'm a little bit of this, believe they can work anywhere. They're in, Spain, but their laptops are open and they're getting their job done, and then they're going to eat paella later tonight. And that's okay, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're here one time, so I think life should be enjoyed. But yeah, I think that's I would say the difference. Just the ways that perhaps working with an older generation, my boss at the time, when I first started in sales, I couldn't leave the office. So I'm in an office every day from 8 to whenever until I made 80 cold calls and connected with them. I couldn't leave the office. And they're all recorded. There was no way around it. Everything's logged in Salesforce. Everything's recorded on my desk phone. And, so some of the sales teams I've come across, I'm like, this is like the country club. And so it's, I think there's some pros and cons to both, but every generation is obviously doing what they think perhaps was missing from the previous. And so eventually, perhaps like clothing styles, it'll come full circle.
100%.
Yeah, so interesting. I mean, like balance and flexibility, definitely a big trend we're seeing right now. And especially after coming out of the pandemic, rise of remote work kind of changing how all industries work. But speaking of other things that, are really shaking things up and changing the way we work and how we interact with each other is really kind of the rise of AI and applications of that. The restaurant industry is, typically seen as a little bit of a laggard, but we've really seen over the last couple of years some interesting use cases and applications of AI in a variety of different ways. So you have a really unique perspective because you've worked on vendor side. You've actually seen some of this innovation from idea phase to fruition, I'm sure. But then you've also been on the operator side where, sometimes what looks good on paper isn't good in practice. So I guess using your experience, could you walk us through some of the applications of AI where you feel like actually this is a really good use case for where we're at right now in the growth of AI, whereas others, maybe that have missed the mark a little bit or are still in their infancy?
What I think of AI, right, is initially, because it was so public and big elephant in the room, is Wendy's and dynamic pricing. They got pretty beat up, and I made this joke at the conference I was at a couple of months ago where I was like, brands right now are not talking about politics, religion, or dynamic pricing because it just was such a fork. And it's just, to be clear, I don't disagree with dynamic pricing. I actually think it's a good idea. Put that on the record there. So I think there's ways that it could be marketed better. And I think there's ways operationally it could be beneficial where you reward, because it doesn't always have to be a surge pricing, right? It can always be a discounted pricing for having a customer behave in a different way. So, if I'm driving home from the airport at 3 p.m., I'm thinking about what's for dinner tonight. So it's either me ordering dinner, my husband ordering dinner, or either one of us cooking and or somehow procuring food, right? And so if I get a discount for ordering a meal that my husband's going to get home on the way, he's going to pick up on the way home from the gym, that we get a discount for pickup at 6 p.m., but I ordered at 3, you've trained me well. It's like Uber when you pre-order it. And Ubers of the world have done surge pricing, and we don't even think twice. I want a car now, and I hit ride. And so I don't understand why that would be not applicable to restaurants. If there is a surge after a conference or after a concert, these restaurants are getting slammed. And so if it's going to cost you more money to get a 10-piece chicken nugget, then people will probably pay. I'm not super stressed about that. And if you get football Sundays, if you can order ahead and get a discount, or it's Sunday and game time is 1:00, it makes sense to say that's okay. The pizza is going to cost more today because we have more staff. It can help offset labor. We have, we're trying to throttle. Pizza times are at 45 minutes and we're working on this. Like in my opinion, that is okay. I do think that there's ways to do it or present it in a way that consumers can't get an opinion about it until they experience it. And so I think Wendy's was too ahead with it, and then everyone had an opinion, and then they had to backpedal. I do believe, and this is not confirmed, so come at me, McDonald's, but I do believe McDonald's is testing some surge or discounting pricing, so dynamic. on their app. A couple weeks ago, I was at a conference and someone said they ordered McDonald's and it was $8.99 on Tuesday at 7 p.m. And then Thursday night around 10, it was $11.99. And I said, that's super interesting. I hadn't gotten McDonald's in a while and I had not tested, but I think there's ways to do it that perhaps a little stealthy, or it could be, presented in a marketing push by saying, we are going to be doing dynamic pricing, but order ahead so that our kitchen and our staff can prep that, we'll give you a discount on that as well. So that one I think is super interesting. When it comes to AI, the tool is going to be as smart as the machine learning data that goes into it. And so you have to be either all in on AI or focus on a certain sector of it to sample it, because you can't just go straight automation and turn it all on and have everything correct. I think with labor the way it is, I think using voice ordering and, an AI tool for drive-through is excellent. I think there's some people that are doing a great job at that. There's also obviously menu updates and kind of learning types of automation. Obviously, no one even has a phone number listed on a website anymore. So
Well, just to go into that, I just want to take back to the comment you're making about McDonald's, because whether they are doing it or not doing it, but what's interesting is that's from the app through app orders only. And why I think that solves one of the problems with in-store dynamic pricing, because if you're doing, let's say you're doing a surge pricing, but in-store, you as the consumer, you've already invested time and energy to go there. Even if you're just diverting off your route to go to a drive-through, it's minutes. And so if you then get there and realize, it's more expensive, that's going to be very damaging to the brand. But if it's in the app, your time investment as a consumer has been, minimal, and you can still switch to a different provider without, really any loss of time. So I think that's really smart.
And I think they're testing it to see if they do get, at cart abandonment, or they get, larger orders or smaller orders during those times. I think there's a lot of data they can collect from that. But I'm guilty of this myself. If I am out and I'm looking for a ride home, whether it be to the airport or, home from dinner, depending on where I'm at, if Uber is very pricey, I leave and I go to Lyft. And I also do the same thing when it comes to wait times. So, I flip to your point exactly. So I flip between them looking for what I want, which is a ride, or what you want is a sandwich. And so I think that, through the app and or through whether it's marketplace or whether it's through call ahead ordering, however you want an online ordering, if they still have, websites up doing that, I think that's super important. I also think it can be utilized during catering. We can get your order done today, but it is going to be more expensive than if you, allowed us 48 hours to prep this or a week to prep this. I think the convenience charge is something that we're missing out on, and labor has been nothing but challenging and expensive. And so, I think that's a good way to offset by giving someone what they're actually looking for, their actual want, and then, saying, we'll do it for you, but it's going to cost you more. And then usually when people are in that rush or they need it then, tell me what, take my money.
It's really interesting, especially the Wendy's case study. Part of it was they had a way that they wanted to brand it. I believe they called it dynamic, and then articles picked it up and called it surge, and that's when it spiraled out of control. So you kind of have to look at it on all angles there. But you mentioned something interesting, which got me thinking about just, I guess, throughput in restaurants, right? Like based on how many people you have in the kitchen on shift, right? There's a certain amount of throughput that you could put out, and almost this dynamic pricing could be a way where if there is a concert and you're right outside where the concert was, right after it goes in, you're getting slammed, you could jack up your prices for your other channels to make sure, like, look, if you want to pay, we're really slammed, we know we could only serve these people who are in store right now, like it'll come at a premium. So yeah, I think there's some really interesting use cases. It's not black and white. I think it's always going to land somewhere gray, and there's going to be a lot of experimentation. But
I think it's super interesting because I think a lot of people want, because then also AI and machine learning are obviously streamlined opportunities for the restaurant to take out the human factor, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but take out the error that humans make. We're all humans, right? So take those out so that there are some operational efficiencies that come from AI and or whatever it would be, robot, whatever fits your restaurant brand. But I do, just to make sure that we say this, I do firmly believe, and then we've said this whole conversation, that we are in the hospitality space. And, you can have an argument. This has been used in many conversations at shows, and I'm sure you guys have heard this as well, that, you could argue who has a better chicken sandwich. Is it Chick-fil-A or Popeyes? I'm team Popeyes, but it is never consistent. And when I go through the drive-through, which is super easy, voice automation, I get greeted at the window and it says, "How may I help you today? I hope you have a blessed day." My pleasure. And it is the experience. And I think the experience of hospitality cannot be taken away through robots or machines. Like we as a restaurant space, I think, are lagging because, you go to a restaurant at the end of the day and you like the staff. They have great waitresses, waiters, and it's an okay burger. But you go there because you're just like, well, let's head up there. And you have a nice little tableside chat and your burger's okay, but you're not going there necessarily for this perfect food. You're going there because you get great service. And that's what the service industry is for. And so I think those are things that perhaps brands have been scared of or a little gun shy for it. And then the Wendy's, Wendy's social media is super funny, right? They're snarky, they're quick-witted, and maybe they were trying to get ahead of it that way and keeping their persona. But I think that more brands should explore it for the operational and labor efficiencies. And then obviously I'm okay with dynamic pricing. But I do think that, one thing we can't lose in our space is the people and hospitality element.
We're nearly out of time. This has been a very interesting conversation. I've got one more question for you, which is around, so the part of the restaurant sector that is automating fastest and there's already the least amount of human contact is in QSR. And so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts specifically on QSR as we're seeing different ways of interacting with technology. You just mentioned ordering through voice AI, through drive-through. Like, from a consumer perspective, how do you think the nature of hospitality might change? Or what do you think consumers are going to be looking for in the next few years? Like, do they want that human there? Or actually does a quirky on-brand AI conversation, and I mentioned this because we had Wade Allen on the show recently, and he mentioned how they're thinking about doing kind of Easter eggs on the phone when you call in, and you can, because they found in their testing people talk back and forth to the AI because they like the brand. So I'm just wondering if you could reflect on specifically on QSR and where you think kind of the human element will play most in the minds of consumers.
I think generally with QSR, it depends who your consumer is, right? So my dad is never going to go through the drive-thru at McDonald's, pre-order, pay, get a number, go to the drive-thru, tell him his number to the drive-thru AI and get his bag and leave. He will not, I promise you that. He's young, he's hip, he travels all over the world. He will never do it. So, but I just think that, one of the things that you have to know is your audience. So like a great example is Raising Cane. They are crushing it, right? They are doing an absolutely amazing job. Their target audience is 25 and under. They're going to be totally fine. They don't actually care if they talk to a human. Do not care. Part of me says that's a lost art. It's really sad. Long story short, we were friends and visiting their daughter at college, and we left the dorms and we were like, that boy was so nice. He talked to us. Wow, the bar is low. It's just something that I think that it's a lost art. So part of me doesn't even want to say that they don't want to talk to humans, but it would make me sad if that was the case. But at the same time, I think whatever QSR is and whatever your demographic is really where you're going to be able to insert AI at certain points in the sale. So Raising Cane's is very simple also, right? And, chicken tenders and sauce. So it's something that I think the kids know what they want. It's simple, easy menu, but there's people that go to hamburger places and want, extra pickle and lettuce. And is the machine learning going to know that? And who are you going to talk to if it's not made right, if you're dining in? And so I think there's just certain elements that could get lost there. But yeah.
Good advice to end on. Just knowing your customer, again, like so widely applicable. And it needs to be at the core of, I think, successful business strategies. Well, Kim, we've got to wrap up. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. For our listeners, this has been Kim DeCarolis, hospitality sales superstar, former SVP of Strategic Growth at Craveworthy Brands. You could follow Kim on LinkedIn to stay up to date with all of her speaking events, opinions about hospitality, and her continued rapid career growth, I'm sure. So, Kim, it's been a pleasure. Really great conversation.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Menu Mix. If you liked this episode and found it insightful, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please follow and leave us 5 stars. It all goes a really long way in helping the channel out. Tune in next week for another very exciting episode where we'll be featuring Joe Lepore, Global Foresight Director from McDonald's. If you want to get in touch with any questions, feedback, or suggestions for future guests to feature on the show, please reach out at info@menumixpod.com. We'll see you next week.